Will you make way for the Taoiseach there? He'll just come in.
I don't want to interrupt.
Round two.
Now, having got warmed up, Deputy Doherty, you wish to understanding Order 38.
Jaskin Corlia, agus a Hanisha to brew all war highly the wear price na te gardugus ni credin should the glusin that a dear and realtis na yeni should the la taku or tifa agus ni feder off a tell you on the price na shaw ulshins Kahi and realtis the pakashke taki art the horse on Kenya a horu fuishi the ebrani agus chili lycra Taoiseach soaring prices, that's what everybody's talking about out there. In the last couple of weeks, we put out a cost of living survey online, and thousands of people have replied to that survey, and the results mirror what we're hearing every single day. The price of everything is going through the roof, and people are finding it harder and harder just to keep their heads above the water. Almost 70% of respondents to our survey said they were just managing to get by. And people are sick of seeing their hard-earned money being swallowed up by these out-of-control prices, fed up with barely keeping up. They're hit from all angles, whether that's extortionate rents, massive energy bills, the high cost of petrol and diesel, or the unaffordable childcare. But the one thing that's putting households under the most pressure at this time is the cost of food. 91% of respondents told us that they were struggling with runaway grocery prices. As part of the survey, Taoiseach, we asked them to tell us their own story, and I want to share a few of them with you today. Jackie wrote, "My weekly food shop bill has doubled. 4 years ago, I wasn't worried about the summer holidays, but kids will want days out and treats, just like ice cream. I can't afford that. I haven't bought myself new clothes in 3 years. I don't sleep well with worry." Paul says, "When we go grocery shopping, we tend to buy the cheapest brands and try to get our meat and poultry at discounted price in the sell-by-date fridge. We worry that we're not eating properly. We're afraid to turn on the heating when it's needed because our bill goes through the roof. We have a 7-year-old son. It hurts telling him that we can't afford to buy him nice things." Lorraine went on and she told us, "As 2 university graduates with 4 children, we struggle every week. Only one parent can afford to work full-time, as childcare is too expensive. And we're trying to manage 6 people on 1 salary. Our grocery bill," she says, "has skyrocketed. We try to save on our electricity bill, but this is also way higher than it was 4 years ago. Our health insurance puts us into debt, but we have to pay it because one of us has a life-threatening medical condition. It's infuriating. My teenagers are going to college soon. I have no idea how we're going to pay for that." Now, that's just a snapshot. We've thousands of people who came online and filled in this survey. And that's a snapshot of what they're feeling in terms of out-of-control prices and what it's doing to people. And it is a nightmare for folks out there. And they can't believe their ears when they hear the likes of yourself stand up, or the Taoiseach, or your partners in government stand up and say that you're not going to do anything for them, that you're not going to bring forward a cost of living package in this year's budget. The state has never been better off, but the hard-working people who made that happen have been left high and dry. And the question is how is that fair? Because, Taoiseach, you say, and I'm sure you'll say it again, that your government is aware of what people are going through, but then you do nothing. Then you rule out a cost of living package. So you can't keep patting yourself on the back for the things that the government did last year or the year before, because people are under pressure in the here and now. Right here, right now. That's Paul's experience, that's Jackie's experience, that's countless experience right across the state. They need help now. So I'm asking you, Taoiseach, I'm pleading with you, Taoiseach, to change your mind. I'm asking the government to do its job and bring forward a package of support that will provide relief for these households. You need to bring a cost of living package forward without delay.
Taoiseach.
Well, thanks very much, Deputy Doherty, for raising this issue. And I do want to acknowledge at the outset, because it's true, that people in this country are still finding the cost of living a very significant issue. I know that, you know that. There isn't a TD in Dáil Éireann that isn't aware of that in their own community and their own constituency work as well. But where I do want to be very clear is the government is taking action in the here and now in a whole variety of areas. And there isn't actually a question of saying the government saying you have to wait for support until the budget, because actually the government's already taking action right now, this month, that's already going to have an effect on people in a whole range of areas. And let me just give you a few examples. So this month, 114,000 carers will receive the highest carer support grant ever, and quite rightly so. Next month, you're going to see income levels for the carers allowance increase, so many more people will qualify for financial support. Over the summer months, you'll see the back to school clothing and footwear allowance paid out. In the month of September, you'll see a very significant increase in the number of people who qualify for the fuel allowance, bringing more people who are worried about the heating bills, and particularly worried about in the run-up to the winter, qualifying for the fuel allowance for the first time ever. This month, and again later this year, you'll see public sector pay increase, including for the most lowest paid workers in the public service, benefiting around 300,000 people. Anybody with a child starting secondary school in September will see the free school book scheme that's been a real success at primary school now extend to secondary school. You'll see, and you talked about the cost of food there, you'll see for the very first time the rollout of the hot school meals on a summer version this summer as well. We're calling a summer meals programme. Women going into the pharmacy accessing HRT now see that free in the last number of weeks. Student grant payments will increase from September, and childcare costs have fallen this year. And when this government came to office, we made the decision to extend the reduced VAT rate on gas and electricity for exactly the same reasons you say, that if we didn't, we would have actually seen the VAT rate at 13.5%, and we thought that was wrong. So we took the decision in the here and now to make it 9% as well. And in recent weeks, we brought about a reduction in the levy called the Renewable Electricity Public Service Obligation, which will see people get about a 40% reduction on their levy, which will save them a few bob on the electricity bills as well. So yes, this government is taking action in relation to the cost of living. And I don't think it's right or proper to get into some sort of branding exercise. Is there going to be a cost of living package? There are going to be measures to help people in the budget with their cost of living. Absolutely. Read our programme for government. Read what we want to do on childcare. Read what we want to do for small businesses. Read what we intend to do for carers. Read how we intend to support farmers, and expect to see progress in this budget and the next number of budgets as we seek to fulfil that. But I push back very strongly against the narrative that anyone in government is saying, sit back and wait many months. And I've given you examples, over 10 examples there, in the here and now, where we're already helping people with the cost of living, and we want to build on that further. I do accept, and we can all quote, inflation is falling. That's true. We've gone through a big inflationary crisis, probably the highest since the 70s, but I also accept that there's a very significant time lag in many areas between inflation falling and consumers, citizens seeing any benefit in terms of their bills. I also want to make one more point, because you referenced the whole issue of groceries. There is a commitment in the programme for government to expand the powers of the CCPC, and I think that should happen as well. We've seen some recent examples where they've taken action to protect our consumers, and I do think we now need to see how we can strengthen their powers further.
When you say inflation is falling and it'll take a while for people to feel the effect, you know the phrase inflation is falling means prices are still going up. It just means that they are not going up as fast as they were in the past. It means that the prices that people have already seen go up in the last number of years are more expensive today. And that's the real lived experience of the likes of Jackie, of Paul, of Lorraine, of thousands of people across the state. I told you, you can pat yourself on the back all you want in terms of what you've done. The real lived experience of people out there is not enough has been done. And your government has ruled out a cost of living package in this year's budget. It is the wrong approach. But you have done other things that you didn't mention. For example, you passed legislation last night that every single person in this state will pay more local property tax. Earlier this year, you put up the price of petrol and diesel. Earlier this year, you put up the price of gas and home heating oil to keep their homes warm. And just in the last weeks, you've ensured that rents will go up for new renters right across the state, including students that you talked about in terms of student supports. That's also the lived experience of people. But let's get down to basics. Costs are going through the roof. People are struggling in terms of their weekly shopping. Your government minister said that he was going to stop this. He was going to tackle this. 2 years ago, he said he was going to call in the supermarkets. He was going to lay down the law, and everything was going to change within 6 weeks. Prices are through the roof, and this government is impotent in the face of that, and people are struggling. So I'm asking you again, a cost of living package that will support families and workers right throughout this state in the middle of this cost of living crisis is what is needed, and it needs to be brought forward without delay.
See, you accuse me of saying things that I never said. Nobody suggested here that anyone's patting themselves on the back. What I did for the people watching at home was push back against your misinformation and disinformation that the government isn't taking action on the cost of living. People know the record of this government in helping them through the last number of years. They know how many measures we took. But I'm also making the point, because I don't want fear and anxiety to be sowed in people, that this government is taking help today. We're putting measures in place to help today. Look at what we're doing in relation to the Carer Support Grant. Look at what we're doing to make sure more people can qualify next month for the Carers Allowance. Look at what we're doing to make sure more people qualify for the fuel allowance in September. Look at what we're doing to increase the student grants from September. Look at what we're doing in terms of increasing public sector pay. Look at what we're doing in relation to free secondary school books. Look at what we're doing in relation to free HRT. And we will continue to do this. But you know what else we'll do? We'll keep the economy safe, because we are in a very turbulent time as well. And you come in here and you say, abolish the carbon levy, get rid of the property tax, get rid of this, and then spend a load more too. And people saw through that in the election, Pearse. They saw through that, Deputy Doherty, and that's why they voted to put centrist government back in office.
Deputy Conor Sheehan.
Tomorrow will mark another dark day when the latest homeless figures are published. The figure will be over 15,000, which is the population of a town the size of Tullamore. There were 4,775 children homeless in the most recent figures, each an individual tragedy. The impact of homelessness and unstable living conditions on children is catastrophic. Those were the words of the Ombudsman for Children on Tuesday at the Housing Committee. Go back just 5 years to May 2020 and there were 2,787 children then homeless. In 5 years, a 60% increase in child homelessness. The long-lasting effects of such trauma and displacement put these children at increased risk of poverty, social exclusion and adult homelessness long after they have moved out of homeless services. If you want confirmation of the total failure of your housing policies, that statistic sums it up. You admitted yesterday homelessness is too high in Ireland and we have to work every day to do better and more. The Ombudsman called for bold, brave measures to address the crisis. There is a need for a specific child and family homelessness strategy built on 3 pillars: prevention, supports in homelessness and delivery of social and affordable housing. On all measures, the government is failing. There's no point telling a homeless child we're building more social homes than at any point since the 1970s. Your government and the previous one had one of the highest levels of public expenditure for housing, yet one of the poorest outcomes. The words of the Housing Commission and not mine. There is a level of inertia on the delivery of public housing that is impossible to understand. Councillors and local authorities across the country will tell you of the dead hand of the Custom House restricting their ability to get on with it. The private sector won't solve this crisis, only the state can. We know that the tenant in situ has been gutted. We know that the Minister has stalled 500 homes by pausing the PPP, and we know that you have hiked rents in the private rental sector. An €8 billion surplus, but we can't keep families in their homes. These are things within your control. I wrote to the Minister with policy measures to address homelessness in March, but I still haven't received a response. The programme for government has no mention of homelessness prevention, and there are huge variations in how individual councils treat homeless children. Labour proposed the Housing Homeless Families Bill 8 years ago, and this was supported by Focus Ireland, and it has passed pre-leg scrutiny. The previous minister considered including it in the Housing Miscellaneous Provisions Bill last year, but failed to act. The Children's Ombudsman called for the same measure in their 2019 report, No Place Like Home. Will you now act? How many children must suffer the trauma of homelessness before we see real emergency measures? Will you heed the words of the Children's Ombudsman with bold and brave action and a dedicated strategy? Taoiseach, for nearly 5,000 children, it's already too late. You want to do better and do more. Will you at least put a plan in place?
Well, thanks very much to Deputy Sheehan, and thank you for highlighting what is the biggest domestic emergency we face in this country, the issue of housing, and it's nowhere more acute than when it comes to the issue of children, and on that we're united. Let me say at the outset, I have huge respect for the Children's Ombudsman, Niall Muldoon, for the work of his office and for his independence. We established this structure, I think both our parties established this because it's good to have somebody to hold the feet of government to the coals and keep us under pressure. And I think the points he made this week remind us of the real acuity of this situation, and I think he made a number of constructive suggestions, including asking the joint Oireachtas Committee on Housing to play a role in relation to this, as I'm quite sure cross-party people will want to see happen. But what I would say is this, and I say this very respectfully to the Ombudsman, and I say it to you as well, it's actually because we're so aware of the issues in relation to children that we're taking some of the measures that we've taken. And I did say this yesterday. I mean, the no-fault eviction ban that we're legislating for will help children, will help keep children in their home. I think you'll agree with that. Bringing in cost rental, I was out in Tala yesterday, where we have the first cost rental scheme by a council as opposed to the LDA. Really, really very good development in Tala, 133 homes. Playgrounds, school to go in. This will help children in terms of knowing where they're going to be living for a very fixed period of time, for a significant period of time, for their childhood. I think that's good. That needs to become a template for the rest of the country. And I take the point you say, I disagree with it, but I understand why you say there's no point telling a child there's the greatest number of social homes being allocated since the 1970s. But I suppose I gently push back and say, well, these homes are being allocated to families with children. And these are real people moving into these homes. And we have a social house building programme back up and running. I'll agree with you on one point. Well, I won't share the language of the dead hand. I take the point you make in relation to too many gates and too many barriers in relation to local authorities getting on with social housing. And we've discussed this with the Housing Minister as recently as this week. And I know Minister Brown intends to bring forward proposals to rectify that and to empower councils to move much more quickly in this. And I think that can't come soon enough. We've already tried to take a number of big and bold decisions since this government has come to office, providing clarity in relation to rent pressure zones, plans in relation to the no-fault eviction, reforming our planning laws, providing more money for the delivery of social and affordable homes. You will see us in the National Development Plan next month take more actions to help house building, including the infrastructure that is necessary around water, wastewater and energy as well. You made a suggestion during the election. I thought it was a constructive suggestion the Labour Party made around the role of the LDA, and you wish to reform it. We've had different views on it, but we have agreed with this much, that certainly the mandate of the LDA needs to be expanded, and we've taken decisions in recent weeks to give the Land Development Agency more power to do more and to deliver more homes. And look, on the issue of, I think you said something, I don't want to misquote you, but something in relation to private investment and public investment, there's a need for both. When I read the Housing Commission report, it's very clear, yes, we need to invest more publicly, but we can't just do it with public money. We also need to get private investment to get a functioning housing market in place too.
Sheehan.
Thank you, Last Count Corla. Taoiseach, while the measures that you announced last week in relation to security of tenure are welcome, they were undermined completely by allowing landlords to reset rents to market rate. The Housing Commission was very clear in that social and affordable housing should form 20% of our housing stock. It currently forms less than 10% of all housing stock. And if you have huge respect for the Children's Ombudsman, as you say you have, then I really hope you will heed what he said and come forward with a bespoke plan to deal with child homelessness, but also include our homeless families bill that's sitting in the ether for 8 years in the 2025 miscellaneous housing bill, because words aren't enough and your government has the authority to act, to pass legislation, as you said yourself last year when you became Taoiseach, to move mountains, because this is the biggest crisis that we face, and I don't think it's being treated with the appropriate level of seriousness by this government.
Thank you, Deputy Sheehan. I want to assure you that it is, but I also want to assure you I'm aware of the mountain that needs to be climbed here in terms of where we need to get to. We will obviously give consideration very much to how you take forward the views of the Children's Ombudsman, and whether that's through bespoke strategies or whether it's through reflected in specific actions in the new housing plan. He's not wrong in terms of the need for a renewed focus in terms of children and family homelessness, and I'll certainly ask the Minister to revert to you in relation to your bill. But it's not just about words from government. We have taken around 9 actions already since this government came to office. We've reformed the planning laws in relation to planning permissions. We're increasing the amount of land available for housing by directing local authorities to revisit their development plans to zone more land for homes. We've provided more money already for the delivery of social and affordable homes. We're providing more housing options for young and older people by exempting developments in people's gardens on their own land. We're expanding the role of the Land Development Agency, meaning that the state developer will be active in many more parts of the country, which I think is important. We're trying to stimulate the construction of new apartments. We've provided clarity and certainty in relation to the rent pressure zones. We're regulating short-term lets, and in the coming weeks we'll provide more funding both for housing directly and for the enabling infrastructure like water and wastewater.
Thanks, Taoiseach. Deputy Coppinger.
Taoiseach, every day people in Gaza play what's called the Hunger Games. after 2 months without a shred of food, milk, medicine or flour coming into the territory, they brave Israeli army bullets at feeding stations that have been set up for the chance of a bag of flour, a tin of food or whatever for their starving families. Now, we had indelible images from the Holocaust. These will be the indelible images from this Holocaust against the Palestinians, and history will record that this has been sanctioned and facilitated by the EU and US. Today we see the Taoiseach at the EU summit. He's going to be blocked in any move to take action against Israel in terms of the trade agreement, backed by bigger countries. Now, you've repeatedly used this quote that we must use all levers at our disposal to end this genocide. So I want to ask you, why don't you use all the levers you have at your disposal? We cannot wait for the EU to act in concert. So you're introducing an Occupied Territories Bill 6 years after it was introduced into the Dáil, just before the recess and 20 months into a genocide, but you're denuding it because it doesn't include services. It doesn't have even half the power of the original bill. Why are services not included in this bill, Taoiseach? The ICJ makes no distinction between goods and services. The settlements are illegal and all trade should be ended with them. 75% of people in Ireland want the full Occupied Territories Bill passed. The Palestinian people need sanctions. And there's been no legal advice to the contrary. Is this lobbying from companies like Airbnb who might be affected by this? Now, the OTB is only a fraction of our trade with Israel. According to the United Nations Comtrade, our trade with Israel is $3.2 billion, the second highest after the US, and above China's. While the genocide was in full swing last year, for example, Ireland was the largest buyer of Israeli integrated circuits, while you were Taoiseach, $3 billion worth of electronic integrated circuits that are used, ironically, in our health system, our medical system, while the people of Gaza were having their health system destroyed. Now, I won't even go into the companies that are here benefiting who are part of the genocide, but I will ask you, will you use the lever of Shannon Airport and our airspace? Shannon Airport has become, in effect, a logistical military hub for the US. It has become a significant transit point for the US military since 9/11. The RTE News data, for example, 2,000 applications for exemptions, only 0.1% refused. Literally millions of US troops have passed through Shannon in the last 20 years. Shannon is a de facto military base, and the US is financing the genocide on Gaza. So will you pull that lever and stop the US Army using Shannon Airport?
That was quite extraordinary in terms of an attempt to suggest that the country in the European Union which has done more for the people of Palestine and standing by the people of Palestine is somehow or other complicit in an illegal, despicable genocide that's taking place. No, you did. You do these little... Yeah, there you go. You said no. There you go. There you go. The mask slips very quickly with you, Deputy. Don't like the way this place works is you ask me a question and then I have the right to answer it. It's a democracy, so can my mandate be respected too? Thank you. Because I'd like to answer the question, because surely to God, not everything needs to be that you're morally superior than everybody over here. Surely to God, sometimes we can actually recognise that it doesn't matter what your politics is and where you are on the political spectrum. We're all sickened by the genocide, and we're not divided on that. And perhaps every now and again we could actually pull together in relation to being clear on that. Because again, you're using language that the sponsor of the bill, Senator Frances Black, the woman who actually did all the work on the legislation, she doesn't use this. I've met Senator Frances Black. She's done a great job, by the way. She's a good person who's trying to do the right thing. I've said very clearly to Senator Black that we'd get that bill to pre-legislative scrutiny, that we wouldn't dilly-dally and wait for clarity on whether services was possible or not. We'd get the bill in with goods and then we'd do the pre-legislative scrutiny. And I've made it very clear from a policy perspective, we've no issue with adding services. I want to do everything possible to make it very clear that we stand with the ICJ. We're the only government in the entire European Union that has published any legislation ever in relation to banning trade with the occupied Palestinian territories. The only one. The only one. And what would be very useful for the opposition, and I want to say I had a very good conversation with Deputy Batchik, and I will thank her for this, but I haven't had anyone else in the opposition ring me on this. I'd be very, very grateful if every member of the opposition in a leadership position would do one thing today. pick up the telephone and contact your political counterparts in the European Union and ask them where's their occupied Palestinian territories bill and when are they publishing it? When are they publishing it? Because I'd like to know. I'd like to know when because it is by all of us coming together that we create that momentum that Netanyahu's genocide can't be tolerated. Now, what you've said in relation to Shannon Airport is an attempt to conflate a number of issues. And it's an attempt to suggest somehow or other that Shannon Airport is being used to assist with the horrific activity in Gaza. And there's no evidence of that at all. And I'd ask you to clarify that that's not what you're saying. Yes, you're right, and my department publishes every month, I think, on our website exactly what happens in terms of flights that land. It's quite transparent, actually. I'd like to make it very clear that there's no evidence of any flight stopping at Shannon Airport to transport any weapons or any military personnel participating in any genocidal activity to Gaza or to the Middle East. And I'd appreciate if you'd agree with me on that you certainly have no evidence in relation to that either. So what we're going to do here, Lascian Corley, is we're going to pass a bill that shows solidarity with the people of Palestine and with the International Court of Justice. What we're also going to do, and the Taoiseach's trying to do today, is we're going to build an alliance to try and get other countries, because you're right on this point, we can't wait for the EU to reach a unanimity. We waited far too long. We've got to move on, and I'm asking like-minded countries today to move with us, and I'd appreciate your support on that.
Thank you, Deputy Coppinger.
Okay, the point of my contribution was that we're the second biggest trader with Israel, 3.2 billion. The Occupied Territories Bill is a fraction of that. It's a welcome step, right? The point is why you're not moving for the whole Occupied Territories Bill that was originally proposed in this Dáil 6 years ago. And I think was unanimously or certainly overwhelmingly supported. Fianna Fáil actually brought it in and they were, cheering and whooping about it. You have a chance to bring in the whole bill. There is no legal impediment to doing so that you've identified. So why not introduce Francis Black's full bill? It would have been much quicker. The issue of complicity. The word complicity means that you're involved in or you know something is wrong and you don't do anything about it, right? So for 20 months, we've all known that what's been going on is wrong, and very little has been done by Ireland to use the levers. The levers are there, but are you willing to pull them? The first lever is the Occupied Territories Bill. You need to move it. You need to make sure it gets in before the recess. But other ones like Shannon Airport, the Israeli war bonds, which you and your members voted down, the bar is low in the EU. There's no point in comparing yourself to them.
Thank you,
It's about a neutral country actually standing up for the people of Palestine.
So the people of Palestine know we're standing up for them. You might want to acknowledge or appreciate that. And indeed, the Palestinian ambassador wrote to Sligo County Council in the last week, and she said, Ireland's commitment to international law and human rights will always be seen and commended by the Palestinian people. Every effort by the Government of Ireland to stop Israel's genocide and war crimes on the Palestinian people is highly valued. So the actual person who's in our country representing the people of Palestine wrote to Sligo County. Hang on a second. It's hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up with. It's hard to keep up. Sorry, I'd like to use the 32 seconds available to me. It's hard to keep up with your logic. The Palestinian ambassador has written and thanked the people of Ireland and the Government of Ireland. I, funnily enough, attach a greater value to her view as the representative of the people of Palestine than I do to your view on behalf of the people of Palestine. She represents them. That's how it works. She is their representative in this country. We made her an ambassador by recognising the state of Palestine to have a full ambassador here. Now, in relation to the OPT, be very clear. There are legal issues in relation to services. We're going to tease through them, and if we can make progress in relation to that, that's exactly what we intend to do. But we need other countries to move. If this isn't about performative politics and is actually about helping save lives in Gaza, today we need to call on other EU member states to join us and bring forward their own legislation and stop waiting for EU unanimity, and let's get on with the job.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy O'Donoghue.
Taoiseach, I'd like to put on the record today, I'm not against wind farms and I'm not against biodigesters. But I am for health guidelines to be adhered to, which has been shown in the documentation that I have here, released under AIE, shows that in November 2021 and April 2022, Minister Eamon Ryan and Darragh O'Brien agreed to abandon the 2017 preferred draft approach to wind energy guidelines. A plan based on science, environmental law and a format approved by government. But instead, the following law, Eamon Ryan turned it into a wind industry fairy godmother. no noise limits to protect health, no plan to deal with aptitude modulation and the whoosh and thump, and no action on low-frequency noise, the hum and the rumble. These are actually the issues now in front of the High Court, where 3 wind turbines were turned off in Wexford on these same issues of health. Minister Ryan decided at the time he had the fairy dust to override the EPA expert advice. Did he think magic and strategic environmental assessments? Because that's what it looks like. This isn't just bad policy, it's serious breach of trust. Both ministers ignored expert warnings and environmental laws. That's not leadership, it's actually recklessness. What legal authority did they have to do this? The HSE recommends the WHO noise standards to onboard Panola for the protection of health. How can the HSE say one thing and the government policy say something else? Will you now refer this whole matter to the Department of Health and to the HSE for a proper public review? Will you stall winning energies until the review has taken place on the basis of health grounds? Everyone here, we all are for wind, but we're also for the health of people that live within the areas of where there's wind farms. At the moment in this country, we have 1,600 roughly wind turbines. Under the 2030 policies for target we have to meet, we could have actually to put up, to get constant power, it could be 7,000 to 8,000 wind farms could have to be in this island to do this. Is this why the 2006 guidelines have never been updated? Is this why Eamon Ryan at the time decided to ignore health guidelines for the people of Ireland and put wind energy above health? These people were living here before any applications went in. Yes, and then for 5 years delayed the DMAPs, which we could have actually looked at offshore and moved it along to help us on wind energy. This is what I'm trying to say. Are we now putting health above everything else for the profiteering of wind farms to push in to make 2030 policy? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Deputy Donoghue, for raising this issue. So the short answer is no, we're not. Obviously, we take the concerns and the health of our people in this country very seriously. And look, I recognise that there are people, I've met them with you, met them with Minister Canny. I recognise there are people who have concerns in relation to their own community and their own impact in their own home. And that's why I do think it's very important that we do have new wind guidelines that do give very significant clarity and certainty in terms of this, because I'm a very big believer in renewable energy. We have to be, the government is. It's the way forward. We can go from being, and I appreciate you say you're supportive of that too, we can go from being a net importer of energy to actually a net exporter, and the huge potential that provides our country in terms of economic security. And lots of issues we talk about in this country, like the cost of energy, is hugely beneficial for our country. So I think it's quite an exciting opportunity. But I do take the point. We obviously have to get the planning structures right in terms of how this is developed. And people say to me across the country, you know, why is that field being used for solar? People say to me across the country, hang on a second, is that the right setback distance in relation to the wind turbine? And you are also right, the general direction of travel here will be to see a lot more offshore. And indeed, in the part of the country that I live in, we expect to see a very significant development. That's why we are trying to put in place new guidelines. And I accept fully, and it would be a bit of an understatement to say this process has taken quite a long time. Now, there is a reason for that, actually, and the Programme for Government recommits to prioritising the publication of new wind energy development guidelines. It specifically says we'll have regard to international best practice and standards, so learning from other countries in relation to this as well. And I was in contact this morning with the Minister for Housing, and I know the Minister for Housing, his department, and also the Department of Communications, Energy and Environment are working together to now look at certain elements of the draft guidelines in relation to renewable energy targets as well. It's their intention, following conclusion of the engagement, to bring the review to government as quickly as possible. I'm hoping and expecting that to be concluded by the end of the year. Certainly, that's what the two departments have told me this morning that they're working towards as well. There has been very significant engagement on this. There's been a lot of opportunity for input, for public consultation as well. And the aim here is to get an appropriate balance between addressing the concerns of local communities by ensuring that there's greater, earlier community engagement, while also making sure that we can tackle the energy and climate emergency that we face as well. The review also needs to take on board, and is taken on board, I suppose, the planning policy context that's changed, because of course since this review started, we've passed a new Planning and Development Act of 2024, and we now have a new national planning framework recently approved by the Dáil. So those two documents, the law and the planning framework, will need to be taken into consideration as well. So they're working towards preparing draft guidelines. They'll put those draft guidelines out for public consultation, so there'll be a chance for your constituents to feed in then, and let's try and get the process done later this year.
Thank you, Taoiseach, and thank you for your reply. If we have guidelines in place, 2006, you're right, it's taken 12 years at the moment. We're looking at guidelines, and every time there's a change of government, it's guidelines, guidelines, guidelines. If there's guidelines put in place for wind turbines in this country, at least then they can be put up straight away. You won't have high court battles, you won't have objections, because the guidelines are there. The same for biodigesters. Exact same thing. If guidelines are put in place, the people that want to build these for the betterment of the farming community and energy and everything else will know where they can build them. So there'll be no high court battles based on them then. We'll be able to build them and also meet the energy targets that we need to do. But having 12 years to put in guidelines and ignoring at that time the health guidelines that are there from the World Health Authority, which actually tells you wind turbines are supposed to be done 1:10, that will tell you that there'll be no wind turbines built in Ireland if that's adopted, because at the moment we're building 1:4. So every metre you go up, they say 4 metres away, but World Health Organisation say 1:10. That means we need to push offshore now and save health for people in this country. Look at the health implications. Put them up where we can, get them up, and then cover everything in the policies. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Dunne. Look, I just want to once again say for the record of the House, obviously the health concerns of people and making sure any developments we bring about are compliant with people's health and well-being is absolutely important. I appreciate you saying that you see the benefit of the guidelines, and I share your view on this. Having clarity in relation to this, I think, would be helpful for people, including in relation to solar, by the way, because when I go around the country, people are saying, hang on, is that a good use of that field? Is that a good use? Is that not prime agricultural land? So we do need, for once and for all, to make a call. By the way, when we publish the guidelines, as is often the case, I'm not saying everyone will be delighted with them, probably far from it, but at least we'll have clarity and we'll have an opportunity for public consultation. So we need to call it and we need to get on with it, and that's what the two departments are working in relation to. On the issue of anaerobic digesters, look, I mean, there is, as you know, priority deliverables under the new strategy, and there's specifically actions 5F and 5G. And again, this says that the development of planning guidelines to support local authorities when assessing planning applications in relation to these plants, and a review of resourcing requirements to key government agencies to support the development of the industry are two priority actions, and these actions will be delivered through collaboration among key departments and key agencies.
Very much, Deputy of Sullivan. Under 30, standing hour 38A.
Taoiseach, it's not going to come as a surprise to you that I'm going to use this question as an opportunity again to raise with you the issue of rare disease and drug reimbursement process that we have. Look, I've been in here, I don't know, I've lost count of how many times I've been in here with yourself and the Taoiseach over the last 5-6 years since I've been a TD. I can quote league tables till the cows come home, how we languish as laggards in a European context. I think the most recent report ranks us 28 out of 36 European countries in terms